morning, everybody. Hey, or good afternoon or good evening, whenever you guys are watching this. As always, excited to be here with you today. Hopefully, everybody had a great 4th of July weekend. Lots of good stuff. It was a little warm here. Obviously, we've been under a little bit of watch with the Hurricane Beryl hitting the Texas coast for the most part. Not much here in Austin, Texas, where I'm located. We got about, a drop of rain this morning, a little bit more rain. Might get a little bit of rain this afternoon. More it's a gray showers. My family down in Corpus Christi basically didn't get any rain, which is kind of surprising, just some wind. So as it diverted its way closer to Houston. So prayers to all our friends and family out there and stuff like that. So just got to watch out for those areas that get hit a lot with hurricanes when you're investing in real estate and either be self-insured or expect to pay for property insurance. But anyway, guys, today I wanted to go through something with you. I don't think we talk about it very often. I think we throw a lot of it to our servicers to try to find it. And what I want to talk about is something we actually did this past week. Actually, on the 5th of July, it was something. We were at a friend's house having fun for the 4th, stayed the night there. And our friends were like, hey, there's a house for sale that's kind of right across the street from where we live. I'm like, oh, that'd be awesome, because we've been looking maybe to move. And they mentioned that the borrower had passed away and their son had been trying to clean up the house and had been doing a couple of estate sales, but really kind of challenging on his own. He was looking to sell the house. It needed some work because it was the original owner that passed away, the husband and wife that finally passed away, his parents, and needs some work. And they were looking to potentially own or finance it. So we went over, walked around the house. Hey, it's pretty nice, but there's no sign. There's no list agent sign. When I Googled the address, it looks like it has never been listed for sale because it doesn't give that regular previous MLS posting. So it's not really a realtor to reach out to. There wasn't even a realtor sign anywhere. So what did I do? Well, I wrote a handwritten note and left it on the door and came home and proceeded to do my own skip tracing to kind of find this. And why is this relevant to note investing? Well, if you're a note investor, you're going to get borrowers that aren't paying. When you're buying non-performing notes, somebody's not paying. If you're buying a reverse mortgage, somebody's passed away and there's left heirs. So I just basically put on my due diligence hat and decided to dive into that. And I just kind of wanted to share kind of what I did, give you guys some ideas as you're buying, or if you ever need to track down a borrower in a property, to try to find, if you're looking at a vacant property too, that you may want to take down a purchase or stuff like that. That's the strategies. And I don't think I talk about that as much because we often will leave it up to, obviously you're buying a note, then you kick it to the servicing company. They're the ones that are reaching out. I've always taken the approach, though, that I like to give my servicing company, my attorneys, as much information as I can find, right? What can I find when it comes to borrowers, where they live, any friends, families, any contact information, that kind of stuff is very important. So when I got home, I guess on Friday, I pulled up the address. The first thing I did, obviously, I wrote down the address. One little thing that you can do is this had a mailbox out in front. So I want to make sure I had the right homeowner's name, right? So I open it up, and oftentimes there'll be a name on the mailbox that says who gets delivered mail there, which is important in case it was a rental property or something like that. And it gave me a last name. I was like, oh, okay, great. That's not a unique name, or it is kind of a unique name. It wasn't a generic name like Gonzalez or Hernandez or Smith, something like that. So I came back. I immediately jumped on the county appraisal district to see who was listed as the owner on the tax records. And it popped up the name of the deceased. And then it also popped up that the property had already transferred to the two sons because the lady had passed away. And one thing that's really valuable when it comes to due diligence is if you're buying a property where the borrower has deceased, look for an obituary. So that's what I did. I pulled up, because it listed the name of the two sons, and it had the same last name as their mother and father had previously passed away. But it gave the address of a nearby in Temple, Texas. Like, okay, that's an address. I can Google that address, but I don't know who's controlling it. If it is the son that's living in Temple, great. Is it the son that's living somewhere else, or I don't know. So I hit a little bit of wall because when I Googled the address, it didn't give me a phone number for that address. When I jumped on White Pages or Spokio.com, I typed in the address, did a reverse address lookup. It gave me the name of the son, but it didn't give me a working number. So I took it the next step. I went and said, okay, let's pull up. Let's see if there's obituary. Sure enough, obituary, the borrower passed away last year. it told me so and so who they're survived by, right? Preceded in death and survived by such and such. It was basically Chris and Chuck, okay, and their last names, and then their wife's names, and then it also gave their granddaughter and other people. I was like, okay, so there's 2 sons, their wives' names, where they live, which is important, and then other people. So that gave me a whole list of people that I can Google. So what did I do? I went and Googled their, just Googled their name, and one was in Industry, Texas. So I Googled Industry, Texas. Guess what popped up? There popped up Chuck, his Facebook profile. I'm like, oh, there we go. Didn't see a lot of activity. It's like, well, I probably won't get a lot of stuff. So what did I do? I sent a Facebook message. Said, hi, my name is Scott Carson. We've never met. I'm interested in potentially buying the house that you own in Belton, Texas. You know what I mean? Sent a message there. I went over and looked to see if he had a LinkedIn profile. He had a LinkedIn profile, but no picture, no updates. I was like, wait, this is going to be a dead end there for the most part. Still sent a message on LinkedIn. Didn't expect anything to get there. But then when I Googled, I typed in the wife's name, and same thing. What popped up was a Facebook listing website for an antique store. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And after I looked at the white pages, after I reverse engineered or reverse addressed her name, it popped up that same phone number for Chuck, different one than Chris, but it gave me a number. So I was like, okay, he actually gave me 3 numbers. One was disconnected and, one was no longer on service, but then another one seemed like it was a cell phone because it went immediately to voicemail. So what did I do? I sent a text message. All right, hi. So hi, Chris. My name is Scott, or Mr. or Mrs. whatever. My name is Scott Carson. We've never met, but I'm interested in potentially talking about the house that you own in Belton. Well, it's the wife of the son of the deceased, and she's like, "This is so and so. How'd you get this number?" And I'm like, "I apologize for texting out of the blue. I'm just trying to track down the owner of this house because we are interested." I found out from my friends who live kind of diagonal to the house that the house was available for sale. She says, pardon me, but it could be a scam. So I understand that there could be a lot of scams. So what did I do? I pulled out a selfie. We filmed a 1-minute little selfie video introducing, hi, this is us. So we're real people. Interested in, I'd love to talk with you. So I sent that over to them and they came back, well, I appreciate it, but there's already a pending contract. I'm like, okay, well, keep us in mind. If not, but that's from one of that's from basically the wife of the husband that doesn't live near. So I'm still trying to track down the brother in Temple just for the heck of it, because I think he's the controlling party because he's the one that's closer versus the one that's out in Houston. So those are some things that we did just to kind of touch base. Now, I also Googled the granddaughter's name and information, the daughter of the guy that lives in Temple, and I sent her a message. Same saying, hey, I think your grandmother owns this house or your dad owns this house. Now I'm looking to buy this house. Just not anything. Because here's the thing, I want them to hit on numerous places that this guy, Chuck or Chris, are getting phone calls or emails. Hey, this guy reached out to me. Hey, this guy reached out to me. So that they know I'm sincere. Now, how does this reiterate, or kind of dive into the note business of contact people? So any phone number I get, any LinkedIn profile, any Facebook profile, anything a profile I can find, name of the business, that kind of stuff, that all goes into a file folder. So if I'm looking for a borrower, I'll give you a great example. We had this property in Houston. Borrower died out of New York. Got 3 kids. So tracking down all 3 kids was difficult because when I got the loan file, all I had was a death certificate from the borrower and the reverse mortgage who showed basically where they were at in Jamaica, New York. So Googling that person in Jamaica, New York, and their address, it popped up a profile. I also was able to find the people handling the probate and reached out to them and was able to find they were able to give me the contact information of all 3 of the kids. Now, all 3 of the kids didn't get along. We were going to try to offer cash for keys deed loan. They were all worded. Everybody else was getting some more. So it was in Texas, so we were able to foreclose faster than dealing with them. We gave them basically 2 weeks, and I would have given them a little bit of money, but it is what it is. They chose to be paying the asses, and we ended up foreclosing anyway. But the great thing about things like whitepages.com, Spokeo.com is you can look at neighbors, okay? Family members. It'll often give you family members and where they're located, who they're related to, and cities like that. Such a valuable piece of information because you never know what you're going to get. Now, obviously, if they go to LinkedIn, they got a LinkedIn profile. That's another way to message them. If they've got a Facebook profile, I can message them on Facebook. I wouldn't necessarily go after a non-performing borrower on Facebook. That might be harassment a little bit, but I know that some people, our students, have done that and been able to negotiate, trial payment plans, modifications, just to get the borrower back on track. Hey, we're just trying to contact you, get the ball rock and rolling. And that's fine. Just got to be careful about that. Anytime you can get a cell phone number, send a text message, that's great. If you can find out where a person works and reaching out to them there, those are things that are valuable. Just to, you're not there to, what's the word, harass them, but you do need to speak to them. And of course, you can't be giving away a lot of information. I mean, I've reached out to next door neighbors. Hey, can you tell me, hey, I'm trying to track down the owner of that house. What kind of condition, do you need a condition? I've had the bar, next door neighbors tell me, oh yeah, the back door's open, it's unlocked, you can go back in and out. Like, okay, great. Are you stealing stuff? That kind of stuff. I've driven by vacant properties, to evaluate them. We did this one time, a few months ago. We were up in Dallas. We looked at 4 or 5 vacant reverse mortgage properties we're looking at. And, one, I had lockbox codes, which is great, from the bank and the lender, but the neighbors were peeking out, and that's fine. And most of the time I don't care about it as long as it's not in too shady an area. If it's in a rough area, I'm probably not getting out to go talk to him. But this one property in Dallas we drove by, it was in a bad property. You could tell it needs some work, some foundation issues. There was a car parked in the driveway, a nicer car. And when we pulled up in the truck, they start peeking out, paying attention. And I like that. I actually like it if people are paying attention, because it keeps usually people from, breaking in and stealing stuff and vandalizing if they've got the neighborhood watch kind of program. Well, this lady came across from the street just to check them. And I said, listen, hey, I'm representing the lender. We're looking at this, and she's like, oh yeah. I mean, literally they will give you all this information about the house. Oh yeah, she had a plumber out because of foundation issues, and she passed away this, and her son is here. Here's a phone number. How to reach out to him. All that is valuable information that you can use that may not just be available in a loan file. And that's something to keep in mind. When I first started buying commercial debt, I would Google, go to white pages, type in the address, take off the unit number of these apartments, and just leave the number in there, and would give me a whole list of people that lived in that, apartment complex. And what would I do? Well, I would look at that person and see if they've got a phone number. And what do? I'd pick up the phone and call them. And how I would approach it, so let's say Don is a tenant in an apartment complex. If it's a smaller apartment complex, there may not be a phone number for management, or maybe just be a part-time management, especially on the smaller units. And I would call them up, say, hey, I know we haven't met. You don't know me. I'm looking to track down the apartment manager or the owner of the property. You wouldn't happen to have their name, and literally just ask them that questions. Like, I'm just, potentially interested in buying the property, just trying to track down the right person's name and information. How do you like living there? How long do you live there? Are there any issues? Oh, I've had people go on and like really give me all this. Oh yeah, there's 2 units across this, across the hallway from here. There was a fire in there and they've been vacant, or the washer dryers have been damaged. There's gangs, there's kids selling weed. You get all sorts of information if you just approach it in a nice fashion. And here's the thing, is not to come across intimidating. Is, hey, I'm just looking to buy. We've never met. I'm just trying to track down, the person that I need to talk to. All right. When I Googled your name, it's always surprising people. How'd you get this information? How'd you get this number? I said, well, you have it as a website. There's the contact number on your website, and your name popped up with the owner of this, antique store. I don't know why you're getting surprised. If you put a number now, somebody's going to probably call it. And that's the thing to do is do that. It's always valuable to do that. If you see a name change on a property and you're looking at the deed records or the appraisal districts and you see that something's been changed, Google that phone number, Google that entity, find out what's going on. Those are little things, but they go a long way in helping you determine due diligence. And then also if it's a good contact number for the borrower. There's been times that we knew, and I've done this too during classes, actually pick up the phone and call a borrower. Now, when you're buying the note, you can't mention to the borrower that you're buying the note, or, hey, try to negotiate a loan mod. I had a guy in Wisconsin that called me up, like, I buy in Wisconsin, I negotiate loan mods. I had a time, I was like, before you own them? He goes, oh yeah, I call the borrowers all the time. I was like, well, do you have permission from the bank? Oh no. I was like, well, you can't be doing that. I get why you want to do that, but it's a violation of the CFPB rules. You can't be doing that. It's not a good thing. You don't technically own the note. So what I've taken is a different approach. Like, realtors are phenomenal. Investors are phenomenal for going and knocking on doors that are foreclosures, right? They're in the list pendants or the pre-foreclosure lists, notice default lists. Many people go out and knock on doors and say, hey, interesting. I may have someone interested in buying your property, or you're interested in selling, or interested in saving your house. It's a foreclosure notice, right? Well, in the note business, lists of notes come to us that may be 6 months ahead of the foreclosure process, right? 12 months ahead of the foreclosure process, before the bank or the lender started, filed that notice of default or list pendants. So it gives us a little bit of an upper hand. So I've sent realtors out, or I've gone and knocked on doors just to say, hey, are you interested in potentially selling the property? Or looking to buy in this area? And it's always interesting when you get people respond. I had a property, it was a note I was buying in Columbus, Ohio a few years back. And this has actually happened on a Monday night before. It was kind of funny. Doing a live coaching call, and I was doing a research on this Columbus, Ohio asset. And I found out that the borrower who lived in the property, or who was the borrower, owned a cleaning service. And she had like a little website. She had a phone number, but she had popped up on, like, when I Googled that address, it popped up a name of this cleaning service at the house. I said, okay, well, I guess we've got the right person here, because the name matched up based on the note. So I called that number and left a message. And I owned other assets in Columbus, Ohio at the time that we'd foreclosed on, and we're in the process of rehabbing or doing that kind of stuff. One we were getting ready to clean out. So lo and behold, guess who called me back live on a coaching call on Monday night, like 5 minutes after I left the message, going through the process like due diligence, right? So this borrower calls me back. She tells me who it is. I put on speakerphone so people can hear the conversation. I said, oh, hey, it's great. I said, I've got a property in Columbus, Ohio. I believe you do clean out screws or make ready. She's like, oh, yeah, we sure do. And I said, well, love for you to go by and give me a bid on this. So she gave me the address and stuff, or I gave her the address, and she's like, okay. Well, 2 days later, she called me back and she gave me a bid. I'm like, okay, that's great. Let's go and have you do it. So she went and did it. She went to the clean out crew, and then she called me back up, and I said, okay, perfect. I'll give you the card or whatever like that. I said, but let me ask you, she goes, what do? Do you have other properties? I went, well, it's funny you should ask that. You live at such and such property, right? And she goes, your lender. And I go, your lender is this. She's like, how do you know that? I said, well, I'm in the note investing space where basically we buy debt. And actually, you probably haven't gotten a letter yet. And I just bought that note. I said, you will probably get a letter from your servicing company or the lender, the company, I think it was Massive Management or Land Home, saying that your note's been sold. Well, I actually own your note. I'm actually the lender. She got a little stressed. I was like, well, whoa, don't worry about it. I know you're behind. I have no problem working with you. Let's work something out. I can tell you're self-employed and you did a good job on this one. Let's work something out. So we worked kind of a barter system. She cleaned out a couple of homes, and I credited towards a mortgage payment, and she got back on track and was on track for around 24 months till we sold the note off to somebody else, stuff like that. But that's kind of funny. You never know what kind of situation people are in. We've looked at buying notes before. When we Googled the borrower, we found, that the borrower's son had committed suicide in the driveway, and that the month that they stopped making mortgage payments is the month that coincide with that fatality. That's something you're like, oh crap, I don't want to do that. Of course, one thing you always need to look for too is if your borrower is active military or in the service, if they're overseas or stuff like that. That's an important thing. It's also too, if it's a rental property and you get a tenant not paying rent, is you can always find out usually the commanding officer is, and reach out to the commanding officer, and they will usually get back on track pretty relatively quickly when it comes to tenants. But the thing that you keep in mind is, more than anything else, ladies and gentlemen, is just take the time to make that phone call. I found out before we bought a note, borrower, boom, when we were buying the note, I found out that the borrower was actually in the penitentiary. It was in Leavenworth, Kansas. Well, they're not going to go back into their house anytime soon. So we were able to negotiate a deed in lieu. Put $500 in the commissary. They signed over the deed in lieu, and via their attorney, and we're good to go. We're rock and rolling. So taking that time to reach out, to Google the person's address. I know a lot of people don't talk about it because we get so into the payments, the structuring, the value of the property. But the information on the borrower is just as important that's not in the loan file. Now, if you get a loan file in, this is another thing too. Kudos to Cal. Cal was called me up, and he's looking at making an offer on this note. And the borrower, it was an owner finance note, and the lender who owned the property, owner finance, it's this guy, and he's like trying to find due diligence on the borrower. I said, well, did he provide some sort of financial packet? And he goes, yeah, he said that his credit was good. I mean, who said his credit was good? Is there anything that shows that? No, he made the guy fill out all his information through some rental form, like this rental onboarding, and now he can't log in, and that file is no longer available. It's been deleted. I'm like, you didn't print or anything like that? It's like, so you don't know what the guy's credit score was. There's no NMLO that went through Dodd-Frank. I mean, this was a one-off, so the guy necessarily didn't need to do an RMLO. But it's not, the guy has no information on the borrower besides his name. There's no place where his social security number written down anymore. Doesn't know what the guy's credit score was. None of that stuff. And I'm like, ooh, that's not good. And then that lender or the seller of the note had been self-servicing it for a while, and the guy's been paying like with, cashier's checks. There's no, or cash into a checking account. There's no paper trail that's really clean too. So I was like, you got to either discount the note. You can't pay full premium for that. You need to ask for a discount on that, just because it's important. Now, credit score, I know we don't really care about credit score when we're buying first lien. I know it's more of an important thing than a second thing, but you still want to have what's the guy's credit score. If the guy put some money down, what was the credit score when he got financed, and what's the likelihood of him getting refinanced? Because that was the big thing. Is it was a short-term loan. It was a 2-year loan with the idea that the guy was going to be refinancing out in 2 years, 3 years. Well, rates have changed quite a bit, right? So depending on what the guy's credit score was, then if it was a 620, has it gone up? Has it gone down? Or was it 700? What's the situation there in the likelihood? He's like, oh yeah, it's a good deal if the guy keeps paying and then refinance me out. I said, well, what's the likelihood the guy's going to refinance you out in 12 months? Maybe good, maybe bad, because rates have changed a lot. You got to be careful about that. What happens when it defaults? Do you want to own that property if it defaults? Because the guy didn't put very much down on the owner finance purchase side. So I said, Google what you can find. The more you can find, the better off. But this is one of the big things too, is look at that collateral file, do a little bit of research on the financials or what you can find from the borrower, any heirs, any family members, because if you have to start tracking people down to try to get them to collect, it can be a stressful situation. The more information you have on the front end, the better off that you'll be. So that's the thing to use. Some of the easy sites to use, obviously, Spokio.com, whitepages.com. There's all sorts of different background checks you can pay for. You could actually skip trace it pretty faster, like Dickie Baldwin's got skip tracing service to find information. There's other professional skip tracing services with credit bureaus and stuff like that you can buy into, but those can get expensive on a monthly basis if you're only buying a few notes a month. We've been a part of that before. We'll sign up for that once every 6 months or a year, something like that. We'll sign up for it, do a quick scrub on everybody, and then cancel the service after 90 days or 60 days. Just to get a quick scrub and check out. If we're buying a big portfolio, it's something we'll usually dive into and purchase to do a more professional skip trace in the borrowers. And that'll a light skip trace, name, email, online may just cost you a couple bucks. Pulling credit can cost you $25 roughly, I think, is what we charge for a credit report pull. One thing I've always liked doing, even when I was originating like hard money loans back in the day, private loans, I would make my borrowers fill out a full 1003 application. I would have them go to my loan officer buddy and say, hey, I need you to fill out a full 1003 loan application so that everything is there. And then I'd pay my buddy to run credit. Hey, go ahead and pay your $25 to pull a credit report. And I actually pass that back on to the guy borrow the money from. We would be a line item on the closing table, $25, pull your credit report. Here's a copy of your credit report. Stuff like that. But that makes that file look even cleaner and more, in line with what a bank would require. You can see DTIs, you can see everything that's on the credit report and stuff like that. And that's what we would ask, hey, you need to fill this out. It's important because if we do end up selling that note, it looks clean, it looks nice, and it looks uniform, and that's a a good thing to have. So take the time, look at your notes. Don't just do a quick search online. Take some time to look. Especially if the bar is deceased, look for an obituary, because the obituary is one of the most valuable things of telling you who's survived by and where they live and family. And that's an easy, track down at the county records, county appraisal districts, that kind of stuff, to find an address and then doing a reverse address search or Googling from there and go from there. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, guys. I mean, as you see different lists especially these reverse mortgage tapes that are starting to pop up more handedly, or if you're starting to look at distressed, like I guess Don, with your tax liens, that's a possible looking for information to see if they want to come back and start paying the tax liens, and reaching out, hey, I own your taxes now, I'm about to foreclose on you. Do you want to get back on track and pay or not? Do you want to stay or do you want to go? One of the most important things, it's an easy conversation to have, okay? Especially if somebody hasn't paid for a while. Do you want to stay? Do you want to go? I mean, I get you're waiting on that hello letter or that goodbye letter sent out by the bar, but I always like to expedite things a little bit faster to speed up that process to get that bar coming back to the table. And it's an effective term. There's been times we've reached out to bars on LinkedIn or Facebook, or searching on there, we find more information, on why the borrower was deceased. We were looking at buying this condo actually a few years back in north of Chicago, and found out the borrower was an author and he had a website. He broke his leg. He was out of commission for a while. I was like, well, I can understand that, or found out that the borrower was a tenured professor at the University of Missouri when we were buying a note in Columbia, Missouri a few years back, or Lexington. I can't remember exactly which state, but it was over near the university. I think it was Columbia, Missouri. But that's an easy thing. Well, there's a website. Here's an email address to reach out to, since he's a professor, and go from there. So take this time, put it in the list, put it on a spreadsheet. When you do buy the note, give that information to the servicing company, give it to the borrower, or not to the borrower, to your attorney, and get the ball rolling. And you never know. I mean, if you can contact the borrower after you buy the note, it'll help you understand if they're going to be a pain in the ass, easy to work with, or something you got to be more aggressive and just, saves you time and money. Instead of pussyfooting around with them, you can kick it to your attorney and let them go with it and deal with the foreclosure process. So, and also finding out what your borrower is doing. Whether, we found out our borrowers have done all sorts of things, from cleaning crews to running daycares to working for the government. Hell, one of the notes I bought a few years back, the guy was a VP at Bank of America and was losing his house. Okay. Or somebody worked at Wells Fargo. Those are information it's interesting to get. And there's always a story behind the story. Spouses, kids, any type of stuff that children or the borrower's elderly. This is all valuable information to help you, turn that problem property into a profitable solution. So go out, take some action, buddy. Hopefully you found valuable. Be safe out there, ladies and gentlemen.